Okay, well, welcome, veterans, once again, and greeting to Miss Carin. I am so excited to have you as my first veteran interview.
All
My
right.
very first. They say you never forget your first. So this is my very first veteran interview. And the reason I wanted to interview you first is because you inspired me. And I'm gonna tell you, I spent 20 years in the Army. I retired, and I watched you as I went through my transition on LinkedIn. And I retired in '07, so I started watching you a little bit later. But um, when I went through my transition, became a HR recruiter, then became an HR director, then HR business partner, and now I'm a HR consultant. So I went through the process of transitioning to my second career, basically, and um, and so as I was doing that, I was following along on YouTube. I mean, on LinkedIn, and I saw a lot of your posts, and I tell you, I felt like this is somebody I wanted to talk to, and I wanted to bring you to a wider audience if I could, because you have a lot of things that you share, your video, just your humor when you're going through different circumstances. It's been enjoyable to see, and I want you to know that. And so what I want to do is, Miss Carin, I'm gonna do you almost like a job interview. I'm gonna go through some structured questions,
Okay.
just because I want to put them on record, and so we can share them with other veterans. And I'll see once it's done. I'll see the link and everything, so you can have it, put it where you want it. Okay. Um, so tell me about you before you joined the service. High school, college, work, anything you did before you joined the service, and your hometown.
Yeah. So, hometown Texas. I'm born and raised. I
Mhm.
don't presently live there. I'm actually out in Charleston, South Carolina at the moment. So I'm kind of in a transitional spot. So childhood was a bit unusual. I mean, we all have our stories.
Right.
So just a little background. I think it helps shape the narrative down the road of kind of how I became who I am today. I had a lot of childhood trauma growing up. I lost both my parents by the age of 12.
Mm,
So everything was just very unexpected back in those days. No one really expected to die early, and they were both before the age of 40. So it
oh,
was just like trauma on both sides. So there were three of us, and we essentially became orphan kids, if you will, because our parents didn't have wills back then, because in those days we weren't really expecting to be gone so soon. So it kind of started off tumultuous, I guess you can say.
yes.
Getting her thrown out into kind of the world. Not that we didn't have a family support system, because we did. So we all sort of went our own ways. We were a very different age groups. I was the youngest of three. So I ended up moving in with my grandmother in Texas, my grandparents in Texas, which were my mom's side. My brother was already over the age of 18, so he was kind of on his own. And my sister is the middle one, and she wanted to stay in Illinois, which is where my dad's side was from, is the Chicagoland area. So we just all kind of got divvied up. So
Right.
life became different. Your family structure is gone, your essential roots are gone, and now you're just like, you feel a bit abandoned. You're like, what am I supposed to do? So I'm super grateful for my grandparents, coming in at the older age. It's not always the easiest thing to do, but they're so loving and they were so welcoming of all three of us, really, but I was the one that ended up going. So I consider myself, essentially raised by my grandparents at that point, because I was pretty young. So I was in Texas. I was a Texan, like the
Understood.
traditional Southern girl. I used to have the accent, but all the traveling, I'm sure you can relate to. You tend to evolve that when you've been to many countries and around the world. Your accent kind of changes a bit.
A
So
little
I
bit.
Yeah, it changes a little bit. So I was, out in Texas doing my thing, high school. And then I got married young. I was 19. My
Mhm.
ex-husband was a Marine. He was 20.
Right. Understood.
So,
Young love.
whirlwind romance, right? It's
Yeah.
like we just knew we had to be married. We were so in love, and for all intents and purposes, I'm sure we were. But a couple years into it, I kind of realized that maybe that was a little too fast, and I
Yes.
I wanted to go, spread my wings, and we were just looking for different things. So, funnily enough, when I got married, he was in the Marine Corps, right? He was just get out of boot. He was out in Pendleton. So I was a civilian wife. So I moved out to California, lived with my
Right.
Marine husband. He got out of the service, he did his thing, and then we separated, and I thought, "You know what? 9/11 happened."
Hmm.
And that's when it kinda started taking a different direction for me. I thought, "I'm not really," and this is no disrespect to those that choose to be housewives and all of that. I just knew I had so much more I wanted to do, than just kind of be at home and support my man. I thought I got to go see the world.
Yeah, that Texas
It's
came
enough.
out there.
It's enough, it's
Yeah.
like, I had my day jobs, but they just
Mhm.
weren't doing it for me. I thought, no, there's something more, there's a calling here. And unfortunately, I couldn't do it being married at that age. I needed to go live my life, right?
Right.
So I ended up enlisting and he got out. So we swapped hats. And when he was in the service, he was more, always called him kind of the buff nerd.
Oh yeah, understood.
Yeah, he's jacked because he's in the gym all the time, but he was more like a computer guy. So it wasn't your
Yes.
quintessential Marine. It wasn't that, when you think of Marines, you think of a certain type. He didn't really fit the profile, but he did. And then I actually went in and did the nitty gritty work. So we kind of, I went to the Air Force and I ended up going security forces, which is basically the military police of the Air
Oh
Force.
yes.
But as soon as I got there, probably about 2 weeks in before I got signed to my squadron, I got picked up for a special duty assignment working for the 4-star. So it went from your traditional police to, the high caliber risk personnel.
Protection detail.
Right, exactly. And I'm sure you understand if you haven't been around those guys, it's very political to be in that job because everybody that's of importance sees you every single day. And if you're not on your A game, I was working at the headquarters at Ramstein Air Base where all the high rollers would come through. And if
Right,
they
I've been
ever
there.
noticed
Mhm.
anything, right, yeah, a lot of people have been to Ramstein or been through, or at least launch stool if you've deployed, you may have
Yeah,
had.
I've been through there. Yeah, you're right. I was never stationed. I was Army, but I've been through there. I flew in and out of there. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know all about that base. That's a beast
Yes.
up there, right? So that's kind of how I went. So that kind of how led me up to, the call to serve. And I think the undertone all these years, I'm a little older now. It was just trying to fill that void of such a loss of family and structure. And even though my grandparents were there and they were super supportive, nothing, they didn't do anything wrong. And a little bit about them. Grandma was a Marine. Grandma. So
Understood. She's still a Marine. Once a Marine, always a
Yeah,
Marine.
well, she's passed, so she's a Marine in heaven, but she
Understood.
was a Marine, so that tells you a lot about the family line because
Yes.
females back then, I mean, let alone today, it's tough, but back then when grandma was in, that was another level. And my grandfather also was an army, so we were just, it's a
The best
family thing,
service.
right? It's a family business. And my dad
Yes.
was Vietnam First Air Cavalry, so it
Mm.
was just like the call to serve was there in the blood. I had to figure it out. 9/11 was just the tipping point for me. I thought, okay, what can I do? So in Texas, out on a town called Mesquite, Texas, which is outside of East Dallas, and they have recruiter row, which I'm sure you're familiar with if you've been recruiting, but
I
all the
actually
different.
I actually joined I joined the reserves in Texas.
Okay,
I'm from New Orleans, but
right.
my mom and dad are separated and moved to Texas. So we lived in a little town outside of San Antonio. So I know Texas. My sister still lived there around Austin. So I know Texas. So that's why I
Yeah,
say you
it's a
actually
big
came out.
state. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big state. Sometimes when you name towns, people are like, which one is that? Because Texas is very large. Mesquite's pretty well known though, because it's,
Yes.
anyway, so I went to Recruiter Row out there off Town East Boulevard in Mesquite, and I just was like, which one do I want to go in? And I really wanted to go Marine Corps, actually. I wanted
Mm.
that whole rough and tumble experience for all the obvious reasons. And I believe he was on lunch break. So I just kind of went for convenience. I thought, well, he's not there. And the Army guy was trying to get me to come in, but I was looking at the Navy actually. I was like, I'm going to be a Navy pilot. That was the direction I was going to go.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had my undergrad degree. I was ready to go. I thought I'd be a shoe-in. Well, unfortunately, the guy said, well, your degree is not a technical degree. Back then, he wanted technical specific to even be considered for OTS and to get in the Navy as any kind of pilot. So my
Right.
degree wasn't the right framework. And I'm sure it's changed since then, but it wasn't a qualified undergrad. So I thought, okay, now what do I do? So the Air Force guy, he's waving me down. And I thought, okay, let's go see what Air Force is doing. And also with Navy, they had, probably because of 9/11, I'm not sure, but they waitlisted females for a year.
Mm.
So I was like, I'm not waiting a year. I want to go now. So that each window just kind of closed as I went to the offices, and it was between Army and the Air Force at one point, but the Air Force recruiter was just more available, I guess, which is
Understood.
why
Yes.
I ended up, he was just hanging out more. And my grandma gave me a good pep talk. Being a Marine herself, she said, honey, I know you and you're very physical. And she's like, I don't think that's going to be your issue. She's like, but I just think you'll be treated better if you go Air Force. And I think grandma had a point there, just
She
for all
did.
the obvious reasons. She's like, you just might want to maybe go Air Force. I'm like, okay. So I went in and long story short, I got recruited and went in, and on my 25th birthday, I was in boot.
That's
That
amazing.
was in,
You're
yeah,
the old head. You're the old
yeah.
head at boot camp.
Yeah, I was the old lady, and so immediately because I was older when I enlisted, I was automatically put in all the leadership roles, and I think it was just I was a little more mature too than the average person that was there. Because back in those days, they were all fresh out of high school. Those were a
Yeah,
lot of young,
18-year-olds. That's right.
yeah. So I was old lady, seasoned lady over here at 25. So I thought, okay, I guess so. I was automatically responsible for my what they called them element rows, and I'm like, oh man, it was just a lot. It was a lot to go through that at that time, but yeah, I made it out, and first and last was Ramstein Air Base. So it was considered a special duty assignment. I wanted to stay in, but I was getting ready to get transferred to Andrews for presidential security. So I had my
Right.
TSSCI background rolling. I was at launch stool doing the whole thing. Apparently, when I was doing the pulmonary function test, which checks your lung
Yes.
capacity when you breathe in the tubes, I failed it. So it was very shocking because I'm like, I can do a mile in so many minutes. Are you kidding me? And they didn't give me any chances to like redo it. And I just thought, okay, I'm not a smoker or anything, so it just didn't make any sense. So I just trusted it. I thought, all right, the wheels are turning. I'm not meant to continue. So I got out quickly. I mean, it wasn't a whole
So
process.
did they medically retire you?
No. So they gave me an honorable discharge because I didn't do
Hmm.
anything wrong with severance pay. But
Okay.
they put and I don't know what it is. I haven't looked at it, but they basically put something on my
DD
214
214. Yeah, it's
that wouldn't
a entry code. It's a reentry code.
right, but they wouldn't allow me to come back in. And I
Yeah,
thought,
it's the entry code they put on there. Yeah.
which was, I mean, I know I was pushing the age anyway. I'm not sure what branch I could have got in, maybe a reservist role. I don't, I was kind of like, oh man. So I took that as, a redirection, like, all right, I was planning on going to Andrews, but I guess that's not in the books. So back then, you and I are similar because I got out in 2007. So
Okay.
so a similar time frame. That's when I got out. So same thing as you said. So I thought, and everything was going so strongly with Iraq and Afghan. So I had buddies that were like, "Come contract with us. We need you. We need your skills. We need women. We need this." And so that was what I did. So I was grateful for that because again, immediately I went from, you know, quasi leadership in the military because I wasn't in long enough to really make superior ranks, and I didn't go officer, so I was on the enlisted side
Right.
to GS-12 right out the gate on the contractor side, and I was like, well, all right, this is a different level.
So
So I
you went
got
from making little money to big money because overseas
yeah,
you were tax free.
yeah,
Yeah.
housing, austere conditions, all combat pay and everything, and so that gave me a lot of meaning being in that environment. Air Force was very political, and I learned to play in the game. And
Right.
contracting was when war was exposed to me. So it's just very different places. So I did that for as long as my body would let me, and then I kept getting sick because it's nasty out there.
Oh yeah.
It's worse now, but back then it was just, just not a great place to be. I don't think they paid me enough to live out there. To be honest, with all my medical bills when I came home, I just kept getting like stomach infections and just getting sick because all the bacteria. It's just
Oh
gross.
yeah.
It's gross out there. That's why not too many females want to go. And I
And-
came home and yeah, I actually didn't join LinkedIn until 2016. And just a little old school side note
right.
here. I have no social media because I'm very just kind of conservative with my blueprint. I don't, I have my reasons for not wanting everybody staring at me all the time. I think
Well,
it's
I can tell
creepy.
you this though. Let me tell you, I
Yeah.
can tell you this. You would be great at social media because what you do on LinkedIn has been inspiring, to a lot of people. Because I had already transitioned when I found you, and I was like, man, this lady has a lot going on. She's giving a lot of information, and she's sharing a lot of good advice. So I was inspired by that. But I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions before you go any further. First question
Yeah.
I'm asking that most veterans probably don't think about is: did you go through VA for your medical? Did you get any kind of disability because they put you out for medical? Did they
I
look at that?
know. I hemmed and hawed because, I got out like there's nothing wrong with me. So that was my mindset, right? And I
Hmm.
was contracting when I got out. So immediately I was employed. So I wasn't even really thinking about that.
Right.
Um,
Never too late.
yeah, and I get that speech a lot, kind of like we could get you up to so many percent. And it's something about it, and it's just a personal thing. I don't know what it is, but it hasn't settled well with me yet of that whole story, and that can be another conversation. But I definitely know it's an option if I was to take it. Wounded Warrior Project was really pushing that. when I connected with them, and they were like, we can get you in there. And it just felt so salesy. I think that's why I didn't like it. It was just turning me off.
Yeah,
But
I think a
yeah,
lot of times, and I'm gonna share a little bit here. When I got out, they gave me 10% because I was Army, 21 years, running on cement pavement, 2, 5, 6 miles sometimes, even more. And so they gave me 10% for my lower back. And all my retired friends were saying, man, you need to go back. You need to go back and have that looked at, readjusted, different things going on. And I was like you, I was hard-headed. I was like, I don't want to do that. I feel okay. But as I started getting older now I'm 53 now. As I started getting older, knees started feeling a little different, shoulders, that all the push-ups doing started feeling different. And so I started going back. I'm in the process now that they up me to 40%, but it doesn't do anything. 40% just reduces my tax on my retirement check. But I recommend it because you gave 6 years basically of your life to the service, and for some reason, I don't know if it was being in Germany or wherever you were at, being because it Ramstein had a big airfield. I don't know what it was, but it said you failed a breathing test. I would go back and because it's in your medical records. I'd have a look at that because that's something that you gave your service to, obviously in the military. They're not paying you a whole lot of money, and not in the military, just a little different. I would look at that. But
yeah.
I won't get there. I'm gonna move a little bit in this. Okay, because you told me you were assigned. I got questions for you, but I know HR, we let stuff out.
Okay, go ahead.
So
Okay. Gave you background. Now you got that.
yeah. What did you enjoy the most about serving the nation?
Continuing the family line of service, just knowing that I did my part, being there. That
Got
that was
it.
that was about it in a nutshell.
No, understood. That's good. That's good. Okay. It's a lineage. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I was going to ask you what went into your decision to exit, but you basically told me that because of the medical thing.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Let me see. So, okay, this is the point I want to get to with you. Okay. What was your exit program like? Like in the Army, they call it ACAPS, Army Career Alumni Program, but I don't know what the Air Force has and what it's called.
Well, so this is where it gets a little sticky. So again, this is old school. This is our time. Now
Mhm.
it's so different. It seems like they have all these bells and whistles for the exit programs. I don't even recall getting anything, to be honest. I really don't.
Understood.
Maybe I got sat down and somebody went through the resume basics. I don't even remember. So obviously, if I don't remember, it wasn't anything worth recalling. It was just a very quick kind of, send her on her way. It was fast. And I don't remember I definitely didn't get any post-military support. And back then I
Mm.
wasn't even on LinkedIn. So it was just me and my people.
Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I went to the Army ACAS program basically, and it was like back then. Like I said, I got in 07, so I was on permission TDY and 90 days leave. So I really was out in 06, and there you had like a 2-week program basically, but it wasn't mandatory. It's 2 weeks you come and you go to this program. Somebody talk to you about resume. Somebody talk to you about learning
Right.
how to network and all that stuff. But it's not really. It didn't really, to me, it didn't give me the leg up I thought I would need or that I needed when I came out because in the military we used to have a saying, what are you gonna do when you have to grow up? I don't know if you ever heard that in the Air Force. What are you gonna do when you
Mhm,
grow up? And
mhm.
I didn't know what I was gonna do, so when I got out, the program I went through didn't prepare me for the civilian transition.
Mhm.
It wasn't until being out and trial and error, and then my wife was really good in business, so she started helping me a lot of different things. So it helped me even to finish up my degrees, and to different apply for certain things that benefited my career in HR. But I just want to know. So next thing I would ask you is when you well, you didn't go through a program, but since you've been on LinkedIn, you've been sharing a lot of experiences. Have you ever thought about working in that lane where you would apply for a position where you would help veterans to transition?
Yeah. So and then this has been a journey as far as that goes. So the main reason I got onto LinkedIn, but I'll just give you a little backstory because it helps understand. So I had to check my profile. I'm like, dang, I've been on since 2016. I don't even remember. But I remember where I was. I was standing in my kitchen in San Marcos, California, unemployed and on the brink of losing my apartment due to back pay, not paying rent. So I was standing there like, okay, what am I going to do? And so there was just a lot going on. And I remember going on to LinkedIn and beginning my profile and just, my buddies that know me, they know they're like, all right, Carin, we know you're not a social media person per se, but try LinkedIn, at least that you can get networked and you can start. So I knew when I got on LinkedIn that I wanted a specific presentation for my little channel there. I didn't want to just be on there for any old thing. I
Right.
was reading all the TAP experts and subject matter experts and all the transitional people that are actually employed in this space, given advice. And I was reading how they were talking to the veterans, and I was getting so frustrated. It just felt like, a lot of them were coming across very condescending, very high and mighty. There was just a lot of just turmoil for me listening to that rhetoric. I thought, I think some of the veterans might need another voice, another perspective, maybe not coming from somebody that's getting paid to do it per se, but maybe keep it a little bit more real. And that's kind of how I got motivated to get on LinkedIn. So yeah, that's where it started. And I've just kind of been building it slowly since.
Yeah. Well, one thing I can tell you is that is definitely correct. I looked around LinkedIn, looked at different sites, and a lot of people, you're right, there's a gap. That's the reason I decided I would start this channel. There's a
Yeah,
gap between the real experience of a veteran coming out of the service and then transitioning back to civilian life. Yeah, you can go through a resume writing class and you can learn how to civilianize your resume, as they called it. You can learn how to civilian speak. But
right.
the reality is, what I found out, it was a grieving process. That's I was gonna ask you about that, but because yours was so quick. It was a
Mhm.
grieving process, meaning I grew up in it. I went in at 17, right out of high school.
Yeah.
I grew up, left at 38. So for me, I grew up in it. And so coming out of it, I didn't know anything different.
Mhm.
So the first thing I did when I got out, I sold all my uniform. I didn't want to see them. Like some people, a lot of my
Oh,
friends, they went to work for GS. I didn't want it. I want to disconnect,
yeah.
because I wanted to disconnect to see if I could start again. But
Mhm.
realistically, for about 6 months, I was getting a retirement check. So, and then my wife, she had a great job, in
Yeah.
fact. And so I wasn't hurting no money, but the issue for me was I didn't know who I was.
Mhm.
See, nobody teach you that. You don't know who you are. You've been this for so long. And they got this saying, fake it till you make it. So everybody gets on LinkedIn, they fake it. I'm this, I'm that, I look this way. But you
Yeah.
were giving real stuff. That's why I really was impressed with you.
I appreciate that. And that was what I was going for. And it wasn't like any kind of gimmick. And obviously I got a lot of, it was interesting when I first got on because, you're getting your sea legs. And I had certain community members kind of going at me because I was just saying things as they were. And it was going against the messages that they've been given their veterans in the TAP and the transition space. And I thought, well, that's
Mhm.
exactly why I'm needed. Because all the perspective can't be based off of a certain class of gentlemen, which it's primarily men that are in this space that are of
Right,
a certain age group that came out in a certain war era. And a lot of these folks too, with no disrespect, but they've been sitting in the same job for the last 10 plus years. I'm talking about the vets that have getting bounced around, those that
right,
can't seem to get their sea legs in organizations where there is that subconscious bias that nobody wants to talk about. And there's all these things they have to deal with. I wanted to be able to represent them because to me, that's the vast majority. I don't
right.
feel the majority of these transition veterans are all like I said, I'm that example. I had a quick turnaround to exit. There wasn't this whole, did you have 12 months to prepare and were you and I thought, y'all, in a perfect world, you have all that great time. But even so, I still don't really feel most of that advice that's given, whether it's professionally or personally, is really applicable once you're out in the green and you're in the real world. Because you
Right.
have to live it, you have to be around it. It needs to be real time. All these mock interviews and do your research and build your brand. I get so sick of hearing this build your brand crap. I thought, how are they going to build their brand if they don't know who they are? Just like you said, they've got to find out
Exactly.
who they are first because the brand is all about being authentic. And if you're just putting on a spill, then you just look like that.
Right. Exactly.
You're not
Exactly.
helping anybody out. You're making them just look like they came out of the mill and you're just duplicating clones and they're saying the same thing and all their profiles look the same. And I'm going, who is telling them to just come out so disingenuous? Because civilian employees are going to see them that way.
That's
So the
right.
advice, it's just backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, in the civilian sector, which I've been a part of for a while now, like I said, I've transitioned fully. We look at, okay, how do you help us? And a
Mhm.
lot of people don't tell you that. They tell you, "Oh, you're so great. You've done so many good things." And I played on one of my videos. I played the Rambo clip where he says,
Mhm.
civilian, in the military, I was trying to $1 million equipment. Civilian life, I can't even wash cars because in the military, you are given a responsibility, usually at a young age, for so much stuff and people. And as you begin to deal that, when you transition out, the civilian employer, because less than 2% now of Americans have actually served. You know, it used to be a large percentage, now it's less than 2% of Americans actually served in our armed forces.
Right.
And so they don't really see your value. And even though you learn how to write a resume, you go into an interview, usually most people go into interview, they're very, what's in civilian, they're not, trust me, I do this all the time, they're not as structured. I mean, they go to interview, I ask all the questions, and I try to ask questions to get you. I'm not doing it to you, I'm saying, but I do it when I'm hiring for it, because I want to know, okay, what are you bringing to our organization? How are you going to help us succeed? How are you going? What knowledge, skills, and ability do you have that's not just on paper? I want to know, how do you interact? How are you going to deal with customer service? I mean, all those things I want to know about you when I'm looking to hire you. These are things that most people in the military are not trained about, because you're trained to do a mission. You're trained, okay, you're responsible for this. Go do this. And then everybody you're around, you can look at everybody, collar, know where you stand and rank. You can know, okay, I'm responsible for this. This is my area. And so in civilian, it's not like that. There's a lot of ambiguity. And in ambiguity, can you still lead? Can you still influence? Can you still, and see, a lot of times you don't get that training, but you were given, like I said, real information that like I said, I was already transitioned. I was already HR director, looking at your thing and saying, man, this is nice. I was coming, that's good. I like that, because it was real. And so that's why I wanted to bring you to a platform like this here, because you share real information. Like and I was gonna ask you, for you, when you've been dealing with employers, whether it's civilian employers or the government sector, not the GS one when you first got out, but this outside of that, what has your experience been like sitting across from a hiring manager?
Sitting across from a hiring manager. Oof. And I think I've shared some of those tales back in the day. I've had a good mix. I mean, I've had some straight out, just blatant discriminatory comments during an HR, during the interaction, meaning that the individual across, and I remember this one, won't name the company at this point, but the individual across was referring to, veterans in his workforce that were problematic, and he thinks it's because they have PTSD. I mean, he was just saying all this stuff to me, and I'm sitting there like, firstly, you don't have no idea who you're talking to, like, just because he doesn't know my passions and my background. But it was so unprofessional, and it was interesting. I call it the mirror effect, where I always tell people, if you listen to the person, they'll show you who they are. And if you're willing to see them, then you'll get the truth. But if you're in there with rose-colored glasses, or you're tuning your ear to just the parts you want to hear, like, well, how much does the job pay? You're going to miss the culture. So it's like, you really want to hone in on that guy. And even though HR, yes, you all are significant, and I say we too, because I've been in that space, that's not necessarily indicative of the culture of the organization, that person in that department, but it tells you a lot about where they're at, as far as just their personal beliefs. And so I was just in awe that, and this wasn't the first time I had an interview like that somebody would just refer to the veterans that way, so disrespectfully, not knowing if I was possibly somebody classified with any kind of trauma. I just thought, this is so unprofessional. It made me so uncomfortable. I actually filed a complaint. I didn't accept the offer. They were moving me to, and this is how frustrated I was, they were moving me to the next interview, which was the final interview, but I decided to file a complaint. I'm like, no, I can't overlook that, because now I'm going out there knowing that, and I'm just adding to the problem. I'm enabling it. And it's been challenging. And there was another one, I remember when I first got out, I'll never forget, it was one of my first civilian interviews. And this wasn't the GS side, this was just like a regular job. And the gentleman looked at my resume and he said, I don't know if I want to hire you. You might take my job. He said that. And maybe he was just being funny, but regardless.
No, he wasn't. He was.
I know. But you see what I mean by the mirror? I'm like, I have been shown so many things, and whether they consciously meant to blurt these things out or not, they just seem to do around me. And so I've just been picking up these nuggets and sharing them with folks. I'm like, this is what I mean by the conscious and subconscious bias. Sometimes they'll literally just say things, which I've shared with you, but other times it's a feeling, or it's the way they just kind of, their energy changes when you're in the room. It almost feels like I intimidate them just by being me. And it's not intentional, and it's not anything I'm saying or doing, but I think it's just my presence. And I don't feel like that's anything that should be on me. And I don't feel that's anything that I need to correct, because I'm a big believer that you shouldn't dim your light to make others more comfortable. And so it's been a challenge with that, for sure.
Yeah, I can tell you this, there's this thing that people they have a bias. Everybody has a bias.
Mhm.
where you from. Like you're from Texas,
Sure.
so you might feel a certain way about Oklahoma. Everybody has a bias. Okay, so my experience, this has been a benefit for people who are prior military that was applying the company I was in. I'm looking for that. When I look at your resume, I see military. I'm trying to get you in. I'm trying
Mm,
to talk to you because I know the responsibility you've had before. I know one thing, you're gonna show up on time when you're supposed to be there. I know that you're not gonna be calling off work because one of the time I was doing the orientation, we'd hire some people to come work at the organization. They went through the interview process. They'd had met the team. They accepted the job. So I had orientation set up on Friday. Like every Friday, I had orientation, and I was ready at 9 o'clock. All the packets ready to bring them in, and the lady didn't show.
mm,
I was worried. Now that this is the military, I was worried. So I looked at her file. They had an emergency contact. I called emergency contact. Hey, is everything okay? What's the lady's name? And it was her father.
mm.
He called her. Aren't you supposed to be somewhere? That shocked me because being in the military, you're gonna be where you're supposed to be. It was no like, oh, I'm just doing this for fun. I'm wasting these people's time. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be there. And so I realized that when I saw military, I'm like, oh, you've been in the military? I was looking to hire you because I was a bias because I knew, I don't care if
Mhm.
you were Air Force, Navy, Marines, Army, I knew that you had structure. I knew that you knew if I gave you this responsibility, you know how to handle it. So I was looking for that. So I'm the opposite side of that. I
Mhm.
wanted military because I
Yeah.
believe that they bring a certain and I'm gonna use a French word, je ne sais quoi, to
Right.
the
Yeah.
organization because
Yeah.
they're gonna be responsible. Like I got a friend, he's retired Air Force. He works at Target in asset protection. He's retired Air Force,
Mm.
and he says, if you give me 10 airmen, I run this whole store
Yeah.
because he's so used to running
Right.
organizations. And
Mm.
he said, but with civilians, and I don't mean that, I'm not harping on civilians, 'cause I'm a civilian now. You
Right.
know what I'm
Right.
saying? But I'm saying
Right.
there's a different perspective that they don't, they'll show up and they want to show up, then they won't show up,
Right.
they'll call off. And I was used to military,
Mhm.
totally different. Because you in the military, you
Yeah.
could just call off.
Yeah.
Say you were sick, you can tell somebody I gotta go sick call, but you're gonna be at sick call, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so that was a difference, but your experience, like what I'm hearing is different from that. You've met people who their bias was, I don't want military.
Right.
I
Right.
don't, yeah,
Yeah.
that's unique.
Yeah, and it's funny because je ne sais quoi, I've used that a few times too, and
Mm.
I think of that on both sides of what you said. It's, you've got those veterans. Obviously, we're not all created equal, and I try very much to emphasize that we're not all good eggs in the service. I mean, there's no way to say that. There's plenty of them that they really don't have any business being in the service. Usually, they find their way out, or they create a toxic culture within a subculture within whatever um,
Right.
military branch. All of us have experienced that in the service. I'd be surprised if you didn't come across
Oh
that
yeah,
one
yes.
toxic leader, but we hope that when we get out that we're given a fair shot because of all the accolades, the media, the promotions of our great strengths and skills in general. But I also think that there is kind of that creates that expectation with the employer of the intimidation, and it can put those little sublingual subconscious biases in that person's mind as well if they're not completely secure within themselves. And a lot of people, they're not very fully self-aware, and when they're coming from a place where they're not self-aware within themselves, it's very difficult for them to see you as a non-threat. So I've been seeing that. I've been shown those facets, which has been very interesting throughout the years to see that dynamic. And these are with military veterans that have transitioned and organizations that I've worked with. So this is
Mm.
all civilians. And then the civilian folks. So I've had a good combination. And I think that's where a lot of my stories and shares come from, because I've really been integrated in all the different areas of work since I've been out, and I've been out for a while. So I think it helps to kind of just reel it back in and give people another chance to look through the lens and see what they might face, because I feel like most veterans come across something in the wheelhouse of bias or discrimination or just toxic workforce situations, and when they could be avoided if we would go a little differently with the transitional support. And then you have
Understood.
all these workshops and all these nonprofits and VSOs that are all honing in and trying to bridge the gap. That's the big cliche line that's been going on for the last 10 plus years. We'll bridge the gap at this organization and we'll help you speak, transition that military speak. And it's a little insulting because I'm like, plenty of us speak just fine.
Right.
It's like we're not all idiots, Neanderthals. Some of us have resumes that look good without acronyms. So I don't like being lumped into this kind of idiot pile that they can come across kind of condescending and describe how veterans get out of the service. I think they just need to broaden their lens. And again, these experts that they're pulling into TAP and the voices that I see on LinkedIn that are in the space professionally, more often than not, are kind of inclusive in the way that they go about talking. And again, I've seen many of them talk down to veterans, and that tells me all I need to know,
Understood.
right?
Understood. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I noticed that, like I said, this seeing you on LinkedIn, seeing a lot of people on LinkedIn, and then seeing the gap that I went through. And a lot of military people, I have a lot of friends here. I'm in Kansas, where there's Air Force, the McConnell down the road, and a lot of my friends are retired Air Force. And so when I talk to them, it's crazy how military wind up finding each other. But when I
Mhm.
talk to them, I realized the gap that they went through, and so I realized that there was a gap there that the professional folks weren't really answering, and that I didn't get through my transition program. And
Yeah,
so I wanted to find people who I believe that could answer those gaps, because the one thing about being, I would say, being intelligent is knowing that you don't know everything, and
right.
finding folk who do. And so if you find the folk that know more than you, that you can ask questions to, because that are going through the process, it's a benefit. So my last question for you, I would say, is what would be your dream job if you could pick any job around the globe, and hopefully my desire is that employers gonna see this. What would be your job? What would you create for you for your long-term career goal?
It's such an evolving thing too, because when I first got out, I was like, okay, I have an undergrad that's CJ, and then I went in to get my master's and all this stuff. So everyone was thinking law enforcement, some type of, US
Hmm.
Marshal. I don't know. I had lofty dreams and aspirations of the LE side, but then after contracting, I was and seeing things of the world, I've really kind of been in the fight for being a veteran's voice for that kind of untapped resource. That's always been something that I was hoping would manifest into my physical career, but it's not so much, and there's not no disrespect, but not so much looking to be a transitional coach or a TAP, another TAP advisor. I'm looking for something that's more unique to my wheelhouse that I can add on. And I remember a while ago, this was a while ago, I did a Got Your Six TV video, and he was just commenting on, this is when I was doing internships with the district attorney and with the senator, and I was really kind of wheelhousing all of the veteran space. I thought, if I could tag onto a team and help with changing some legislation and having better support for veterans than we have, and maybe taking on the big beasts like the VA. That would be something where I feel, if my voice was a value add, that would give me a lot of fire to keep pushing. So it
Right.
needs to be a specific mission that I can really unleash and be myself. I think that that's something throughout the years, getting older, you don't want the modified version of yourself. You want to just be who you are. And as long as you can walk the line of being professional, I think that you should be able to find that or create that. So we'll see. Like I said, it's been a journey. I've had a lot of different types of jobs and roles and opportunities. And at the end of the day, I keep finding myself on the other side of the job, in between or looking for a new role. And I really think the fit's been the biggest challenge. And you hear that a lot, but it's so true, especially for, strong voices or certain types of people. They really need to be a fit. They need to be valued. And I think at this point, I'm not negotiating my value.
Okay. Well, my encouragement to you, first of all, go to VA, do your medical stuff. The next thing I'm gonna say to you is this: I would recommend, and I think I left a comment about you doing this, being a voice that's different than those who are right now paid to do this. Because
Right.
this is something I'm giving them time. I even said on one of my videos that if you got a resume, shoot me, I'll look at it. I'm
Yeah.
HR, I'll look at it, I'll tell you what could change for free. I'm not charging nothing. I'm not asking you for a dime. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? But this is something I think you could do as a profession.
Mm,
This is just something like right now. I'm a consultant. And I said it, and so I can work when I need to work. Like I said, everything I own is paid for. House, car,
yeah.
and everything paid for. And my wife is the CEO of her company, so we're not hurting no money. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Yeah. So for me, it's not about income, but for you, I think this is a space that you would be great in.
I
I think
appreciate
you'd be
that.
great at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're not
Yeah.
the first person to bring it up. I've had a few people say, do you have a channel or whatever? But I also feel like the LinkedIn was the launching point, and I think catching them there because so many veterans automatically are getting pushed to LinkedIn versus
Mhm.
YouTube. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? My
Yes.
presence is in my audience and my followers are primarily military and government.
Okay.
So that's kind of helped me just kind of create that open door for them to at least know who I am and hear my voice, because I know they're all getting shoved over to LinkedIn. And I know how
Okay.
overwhelming that could be whenever all these vets show up on LinkedIn and they're like, open to network. And they're sending their little generic, hi, my name is message in their
Mhm.
inbox. And you want to help them out. So I think that's kind of how I started with that particular channel. It's because I knew I could catch them
Right.
face, but I
Right.
definitely hear you on having a specific
Yeah.
differentiator voice to be able to help them further. So we'll see how
Yeah.
that goes.
Yeah. Well, like I said, recommendation first, go to VA. Second, I would start a professional YouTube channel. I would actually start one, and I would take your videos that you have on LinkedIn and begin to upload them to your YouTube channel. And because I think that you will be a voice that's different. I believe that this space is so vast. Like I said, for me,
Mhm.
it's just a foray into it to help. But I know that there are things that I may not know. I know, like I said, I tell people in one of my videos that I've been in all three seats. I've been the person who enlisted to the service. Then I was a career counselor who asked you to stay in the service. I said, hey, can you raise your hand? I'll send you to Germany. I'll send you to Korea. I'll say, what I'm saying? I'll give you a bonus. And then I was a person who actually transitioned and now work in HR. So I've seen it
Mhm.
from every side. And
Yeah,
so I wanted to lend my voice to that to see if I can help. But
sure.
I know that when someone is, I would say, and I don't mean to, how you say this, I'm not belittling myself, but I know when I see somebody who is better at something, who I believe this is something that they would be superb at. See, I'm okay. I'm good at interview. I can interview and I can do
Mhm.
this, but I think you have a voice that can really can reach a lot around America, around the globe. If you choose to.
Right,
And
right.
I'll be your first subscriber. I'll subscribe to your channel and I'll put out. Like I said,
All
and I'm
right.
gonna after I do this here, I'm gonna wrap this up and put it now. Next thing is when I stop this recording and I gonna upload this video, do you mind if I put your contact information, like your email, I mean your Gmail address? I wonder if you don't want to, because some people don't want people knowing that their stuff, but I put mine, but I don't know if you want yours out there if people want to contact you.
I think email is fine. Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
they want to get email. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because that way, like, that way
Somebody
you can.
finds me here and they just want to talk to me. Maybe they're not on LinkedIn or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and that way people can reach out to you. Like I said, future employers who might want to bring you into a role to talk to their people, talk to their man, because you say you rent a lot of different biases, and there might be somebody you can come in and talk to and share with your experiences, and they'll pay you for that. That's one thing
Right.
about being a consultant. They'll pay you for that. Come in and say,
Yeah.
hey, look, these are the that's what I've been through. These are things that you can change in your organization if you truly want to say thank you for your service to a veteran and you truly want to help them to transition. These are things that you can fix. That's something I think you can do great with.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the support. It's nice to be the first on a growing veterans channel. So thanks
Yeah.
for the opportunity.
Well,
Yeah.
Ms. Karen, I really appreciate your time. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I hope that this will be meaningful to people who will see it in the future. For those of you gonna see it on YouTube, I'm ask that you like, share, comment, and I'm gonna put Miss Karen's email in the description box. So if you need to reach out to Miss Karen, especially for a job or consulting gig or something that could be a benefit to her, please do so. So Miss Karen, once again, thank you so much. And I want to do this again. I'm gonna get some things changed around, get a little better at this. And I'd love to do this again, even if I do it on your channel. I let you know what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah,
So
I'll interview on how your channel's doing on my channel. We'll
sound
see how it
perfect.
goes. Yeah.
All right, Miss Karen, thank you so much.
All
You have a
right.
great day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.